Did the punishment fit the crime? And more importantly, why didn't NASCAR penalize Kyle Busch for intentionally wrecking Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 2024 All-Star race? We're going to break down the penalties and why NASCAR might have just set a very dangerous precedent.
High, push it, checker flag, hell yeah!
What's the caution for? Me?
Can I not push it in?
Stop anybody.
Come on, he's going! Way to go, boys! One hell of a job, man, one hell of a job. Thank you so much.
Stenhouse versus Busch versus Childress? Oh boy, before we get on into it, make sure that you mash that subscribe button so that you do not miss an episode. And of course, log on to arnrace.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. So let's back everything up and do a minor recap and talk about why this is a massively dangerous precedent that NASCAR just set. Looking at it, yes, Kyle Busch did intentionally wreck Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 2024 NASCAR All-Star race. Now, was this justified? I say hell no, because there is no way that the punishment fit the crime for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Let's be honest and blunt here. On the start of the actual All-Star race, Kyle Busch, for whatever reason, overdrove the first corner and washed up the track, period, plain and simple. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did the thing that any self-respecting race car driver should and would and could do, and that's fill that gap. Yes, Ricky stuck him 3 wide. Yes, he was doing this lap 1, turn 1, essentially. But honestly, I gotta side with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. on this one, because passing was extremely hard on this tire and at this newly repaved racetrack. Honestly, you gotta get what you can get on the starts, and Ricky was doing exactly that. Kyle Busch washed up the track and opened up a door, and Ricky just filled that door. Kyle was frustrated because Ricky filled that door and drove himself into the wall before Ricky even touched him. And I do think that Ricky was in the right here and Kyle Busch was very much in the wrong. Now, we can go ahead and break down why Kyle Busch is acting the way Kyle Busch is acting in a moment, but I want to talk about the actual fines that were brought down by NASCAR this week. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fined $75,000, a new record for that punch for Kyle Busch. Now, normally this should be in the $25,000 range, but for some reason NASCAR wanted some more money in their pocket that supposedly is going to charity at the end of the year, but let's be honest, that money is now in a NASCAR bank account, so NASCAR essentially squeezing Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for some extra cash right now. Some team members that were also suspended, you had Keith Matthews suspended 4 races for his part in the fight, and Clint Myrick 8 races for his part in the fight. That's fair. We cannot have crew members getting into fights with drivers. I completely understand that. The one that I 1,000,000% agree with is the fact that NASCAR has indefinitely suspended Richard Stenhouse, Ricky's father, who had his hands around Kyle Busch's neck and landed a few punches. Now, for some reason, Richard thinks he needs to go up and fight Ricky's battles for him, and this is not the first time that Richard Stenhouse has done something like this, where he blatantly disregards NASCAR rules and orders from NASCAR officials. Yeah, you can't really do that, and because of that, he's not going to be allowed at the racetrack anytime soon. I don't even mean he's not allowed in the infield. I mean, technically, he is not allowed on NASCAR property from this point forward. Now, maybe NASCAR will lighten this up a little bit in the near future. Maybe they're going to go ahead and reinstate him somewhere down the road, but for now, Richard can go ahead and watch the races at home because, frankly, that's what he deserves. I'm okay with that. No penalty whatsoever for Kyle Busch. I could not disagree more with this if I tried. Now, let's really break this down. Should NASCAR have gotten Busch for something, for anything? I say yes, because at the end of the day, he did intentionally wreck Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, I don't think he necessarily meant to right hook him and get him into the wall like he did, but at the same time, Kyle Busch was frustrated with how his race was going, even on lap 1, and decided to take it out on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I disagree with that. That's not okay. NASCAR is essentially looking the other way at Kyle Busch, and while I don't think you should have suspended him money or necessarily points, I do think that at the very least, Kyle Busch should be on probation until the end of the year, period. something that the new regime of NASCAR officials and bosses and management over at NASCAR, for whatever reason, don't do when it comes to penalties is putting drivers, crew members, and everybody else on probation. This is something that was done for years and years, was done with the old regiment. Well, actually, the old regiment actually put people on secret probation, which is very odd. Just go ahead and tell people, hey, they're on probation, so they know that they need to watch their P's and Q's. I do think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the two team members, Keith Matthews and Clint Myrick, as well as Kyle Busch, should all be placed on probation, meaning that if they do something like this again this year, they could go home, essentially. They could effectively be forced to stay home and not come to the racetrack. That's going to be a harsher penalty for anything. And if NASCAR actually stipulates that if you're suspended for doing something like this again at the racetrack, you are not eligible for the playoffs, you can bet your bottom dollar that Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the crew members, Richard Childress, and Kyle Busch all are going to be watching what happens at the racetrack, and they're going to make sure that they don't do something stupid on the racetrack. Now, let's talk about Richard Childress for a second. I just want to remind y'all, Richard Childress is 78 years old. He is an old man. No offense to him, he is older. But the fact that Richard Childress this week was telling the media that he was going to go after Ricky Stenhouse if Ricky retaliated during the Coke 600 this weekend is alarming.
I don't fight as fair as I used to. I'm a little older, but Ricky Stenhouse said that he was going to wreck the 8 car at Charlotte. Well, when I see him, I'm going to tell him if he does, I'm older, but I've just changed my style of fight. He'll carry a rough ass beating.
I don't know about y'all. I don't want to see a 78-year-old get into a fight with Ricky Stenhouse because I'm going to be blunt here. Even though Richard is a little bit of a brawler and an old-school racer, Ricky's a little bit younger, a little bit healthier, and a little bit stronger, let's just say. I don't want to see who's going to win that fight, nor do I want to see either one of them put in that position to fight. And I do think that Ricky Stenhouse is definitely not done with Kyle Busch this year. This is a new rivalry, and this has happened before in the past, these two drivers getting into it. And why exactly did Kyle Busch lose his damn mind and decide to take it out on Ricky Stenhouse Jr.? Well, at the end of the day, frankly, Kyle Busch is not having a good year. He hasn't been competitive in this next-gen era because he doesn't know how to drive these cars. It doesn't suit his driving style. Let's be honest, he hasn't been with the best race team the last year and change here at RCR, and RCR is struggling. And for some reason, Kyle Busch is in that temper tantrum. I'm going to take my frustration out on everyone else around me. He's done it on the radio. He's done it on the racetrack before, and we're seeing a little bit more of that Kyle effing Busch come back and a little bit of that screw you attitude. Now, I'm all for that, but when you're taking it out on fellow innocent competitors like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. over the weekend at the All-Star race, I have problems with that. Kyle cannot do this. He cannot be allowed to do this because he's essentially going to turn his car into a wrecking ball. And I'm going to be blunt here. These cars are too damn expensive, and these crews work too damn hard on these cars in order to see Kyle Busch turn them into wrecking mobiles. So no, I don't want to see Kyle Busch using his car as a weapon, and that's frankly what he did here. For that alone, he should be on probation. Now, are these penalties fair, knowing that NASCAR is essentially using these as promos already? Heck, they've already copywritten most of the angles that they've put up on social media. No, I don't think it's fair at all, because let's be blunt here. This fight is going to sell tickets. It already has sold tickets to upcoming races and to the All-Star race next year, and I can guarantee you it's going to be in all the promos for the rest of the year and next year. And I'm okay with that because that's an element of the sport that actually does sell tickets. And let's not sit here and pretend that Daytona 79 didn't happen. 16 million people watched that, and it put the sport of NASCAR in the same category as the NFL. And that is worth talking about. Now, is NASCAR necessarily going to give this money back to Ricky Stenhouse Jr.? No, nor should they, but $75,000 is a lot. But I'll go ahead and pose this idea, if you will. Why not go ahead and let the drivers fight? Being dead serious here. Give them 60 seconds where it's just the two drivers physically going at it. I'm willing to bet you're going to see a lot more respect on the racetrack, and you're going to see Kyle Busch not necessarily running over drivers when he's having a bad day. Guaranteed, you're going to have drivers who are driving with a little bit clearer of a head, and you're going to have the crew members get out of it, and you're actually going to get a little bit of that fight element that we see in hockey. Hockey does a really great job of this. They play into it, and it's drama, and it does affect how the players play each other on the ice. I can guarantee it'll affect how the drivers race each other on the racetrack. But let's be clear here, this should be for drivers only. But I want to go ahead and hear from you on this. What do you think? Was the penalty to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fair? Should NASCAR have fined Kyle Busch for his on-track antics? And more importantly, what do you think of my idea of kind of adopting the hockey model and letting these drivers maybe get a little bit of time to physically go at it with one another when there's an incident on the racetrack? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're there, make sure that you mash that subscribe button so that you do not miss a video. And of course, you can always log on to arnrace.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. Want to thank you so much for watching. For Shifting Gears, I'm Alan Bailey. We'll see you at the track.